Here we go. Chapter 16. Chapter 16 is called The Truth at Last. It was some time before she sensed movement in the house. It appeared as vague forms stirring behind second-floor lace curtains, then shifted to the windows below. The front door opened. A tomcat poked his head out. He looked around, stepped outside, and the door shut behind him. He was a large, bony, orange cat with a pinched body of advanced age. One ear was bent. He walked slowly, limping slightly, glancing up at the sun as if to measure its warmth. But by keeping his tail high, he maintained a stately dignity. Poppy held her breath. Surely the huge owl would notice the cat and realize that the old beast had a little fight in him and less speed. He would be no trouble at all for an owl of that size to snatch him up. Nonetheless, the cat continued to saunter pretty casually around the barn. He stopped once and then twice to scratch himself under his chin. When he reached the barn, he sat directly below the owl. Squinting, he looked into the sun and he laid down and he closed his eyes. Through all of this, that owl did nothing. It made no sense at all. Poppy just kept watching. The cat slept. The owl remained motionless. The field of corn rustled. Once again, the house door opened, and this time a human emerged, a boy. In his hand, he held a long stick with a string and a small hook attached to it. Momentarily, he stood on the threshold of the door, apparently listening to something being said from within. He nodded and shut the door. Then he started off on the same path that the cat had taken towards the barn. Poppy, who had never seen a real person, watched with fascination. Surely, she thought, that owl would fly away the instant he saw the human coming. Big as the owl was, the boy was much bigger than the owl. But though the boy drew nearer and nearer, the owl remained motionless, its opened eyes fixed on something in the distance still. The boy reached the cat, bent over, and patted the cat. The cat flipped his tail, but then continued to sleep. When the boy looked up at the owl, he showed not the slightest surprise to see it was sitting there. Instead, he put down his stick and he went inside the barn. With the barn door open, a few chickens strutted out, clucking and pecking the ground. They paid no mind to the cat or the owl, nor did the owl even consider them. Friends, what's going on in your heads right now? A lot of stuff. Poppy was completely baffled. What could that owl be looking at that could hold its attention so long? The next moment, she was even more startled to see the upper barn window open, the window right next to where the owl was roosting. It was the boy who opened it. Oh, even then, the owl did not budge. More amazing, the boy reached out, placed his hand on the owl, and turned it about so that it now faced in a new direction. Here's the picture. Never had Poppy never have been more astonished. Could it be that this huge owl was not real? Was it only a fake owl? It certainly seemed so, but after all, she had made but one observation. What she needed was proof. To get it, she would have to wait at Newhouse and watch. Poppy stayed on the edge of the cornfield, but her time was not all spent waiting. She was too excited to remain in one place. Instead, she took time to explore the old barn at the other edge of the field, by the dirt road, and found it in a respectable addition to Gray House. As for food, Poppy had never ever eaten so well. It was as if she had first believed. There was enough food here in this cornfield to feed her entire family. In fact, all of them could move here, not just half of them. During her hours of watching, Poppy met with no other, whoops, let me show you one more picture, then I'll turn the page. That's the boy petting the cat. During her hours of watching, Poppy met with no other small animals. At first she was perplexed. Then she decided it was because the fake owl was successful. It had frightened everybody away. Not that Poppy put aside her porcupine quill sword. She remained sufficiently wary to keep that sword at her side. She was still trying to be alert. Once she almost used it. At midday, she was trying to take a needed nap when she suddenly heard something coming through the cornfield behind her. Taken by surprise, she leaped up, darted behind a cornstalk, and drew the quill, ready to defend herself. It was a family of deer and a doe and two young fawns. Though to Poppy, even the little ones seemed enormously tall. Even so, they had not the slightest interest in her. Instead, the animals threaded their way through the corn and approached the salt lick cautiously. With the mother standing guard, the fawns took a few delicate licks of salt until at a silent signal, they all bounded away quickly. As Poppy tucked the quill back underneath her sash, it occurred to her that she might enlist the deer's help in bringing the salt quill to Aerith. Here's a great picture. I'll show you in just a second. But from the way that they had enjoyed it themselves, it didn't seem likely that they'd be willing to take the salt to a porcupine. No, she would have to find another way to make good on her promise. Besides, the questions about the barn owl were now more pressing. As far as Poppy could tell, it had yet to move on its own. Though Poppy was fairly sure it was fake, she needed to be positive. That afternoon, Poppy thought of a way of getting proof. The old cat was still stretched out where he had begun the day. The more Poppy observed the cat, the more certain it was that he was too old to be dangerous. She decided to ask him about the owl. The notion made her a little nervous, but she convinced herself that keeping her quill sword at the ready would be protection enough. With considerable care, she crept out of the cornfield, all the while eyeing the barn owl just in case. It did not move. At last she was standing right before the sleeping cat, close enough to feel the wash and smell of his fish-scented breath. Here's a picture. It's cute. Let's see if it's all in there. Yeah. He was snoring, gripping her quill tightly, but using her most friendly voice. Poppy shouted, "Hello!" The cat opened one eye. "Hi there," the cat murmured, although he now opened both eyes. He still did not move. "My name's Poppy." The cat sneezed delicately. "Bless you," Poppy said. "Thanks," returned the cat. "They call me George." Poppy nodded. "Nice place you have here, George." "Pleasant enough," George replied. Well, that owl sure seems to keep things quiet around here," Poppy offered. "Owl? The one that's up there on the barn." "Oh, right, the fake one," said George. "He does the job," he said. "What job?" Poppy asked carefully, while trying to contain her mounting excitement. "He keeps everybody away. He even keeps other owls away." "How do you know?" "Well, about 2 weeks ago, the people here put in some chickens. First day, some big old horned owl snatched himself one, took off with it. The next day, the people put up that fake owl, and about 2 days later, I was watching. That real owl came back to try to get another chicken. I saw him dive. I saw him then catch sight of the fake owl. What happened? Poppy asked. Then she held her breath. That owl put on his air brakes so fast that he flipped right over himself. He must have been scared silly, the cat said, with almost a toothless grin. Funniest thing I've ever seen. And I'll tell you that was the last time that I've ever seen that owl around here. The cat closed his eyes. Mighty funny, he murmured. Poppy could hardly keep from grinning. Nice talking to you, George, she said. Have a nice day, the old cat sighed and resumed his snoring. Poppy all but skipped back to the cornfield. Despite her excitement and proving that that old barn owl was fake, she made herself settle down and think things through carefully. The owl was fake, but Mr. Oakhacks believed it was real. Afraid of an image of himself, he was probably fearful that he would no longer be able to rule over the mice. But, according to Aerith, Mr. Oakhacks was not really the ruler. That was a lie, just as it was a lie that he was protecting the mice from porcupines, whom he actually feared himself. In fact, the owl was full of fears. Suddenly, a whole new idea burst upon Poppy. Was it possible that Mr. Oakhacks' claim that he was protecting the mice, was merely his way of getting them so he could eat them? The notion was astonishing, but the more Poppy thought about it, the more this seemed to be true. What do you all think? Do you think her realization is right? This certainly explained things. That is, Mr. Oakhacks' refusal to give permission for the mice to move to Newhouse had nothing to do with what she and Ragweed had done. He had refused because he did not want the mice to know how fearful he was of losing his own dinners. But if that were true, then the mice could come to Newhouse whether Oakhacks liked it or not. It was not for Mr. Oakhacks to decide where they lived, but for the mice themselves. And oh, irony, if the family moved to Newhouse and the fake owl would protect them. Poppy was so sure that she'd found the truth that she stood up on her hind legs, leaped into the air, and kicked her heels twice. When she landed, she collapsed into a soft heap and allowed herself a great sigh of contentment. With that, she closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. What a day! What a day! As Poppy slept, Mr. Oakhacks flew in to settle on a branch along the edge of Dimwood. From deep within the foliage, he stared furiously at the owl on the barn. And that is the end of our chapter. Here's the last picture. From what you know about narrative stories, and I know you guys knew that, but I'm telling you, would you say we're at the climax yet? Have we reached that? Yes or no?